On the subject of good and evil, my definition of what is good is a balance and communication between one's feeling self, one's core emotional self, and one's reflective capacity, that ability to, in a sense, be outside of your direct experience of life, because these abilities are what connect you to your virtues. So, again, as I keep saying, objectivity, it brings you out of yourself. It puts what's truly objectively true beyond what, feels good or feels right to yourself. And yet it's comforting, because through that you have an understanding that allows you to move from the present forward into the future with greater confidence and with some sense of how to achieve your goals. Okay. I call it the virtue of truth. Not the truth that's my truth or your truth, but the objective truth. The scientific truth. Now, when you're looking at another way that you come outside of yourself and reflect, is empathy, which is much closer to your feelings in a way. You're sharing, in some sense, the feelings of another person. And in that sharing is where we want to do good to others. And that's at the base of what's good. So the virtue of goodness is achieved by empathy, which again brings us outside of ourselves. But in what way? Empathy is helpful for us in the present, as is objectivity, but it also helps us in dealing with anxieties related to the past, because what challenges your empathy are things that caused you anxiety, and what challenged you to use your objectivity was anxieties about the future. So that's your emotional motivation. So this kind of communication between yourself and empathy is the way that you contact goodness. And that means you care about others, not just yourself. In fact, you might care more for another person at some point. That occurs. It brings us outside of ourselves. Now, this thing that's outside of ourselves is still us, right? And, okay, what kind of us? A virtuous us. A compassionate, because it meets our needs, us, that's all about goodness and truth. But those things are virtues that help us in our experience of the drama of life in the sphere of time, or in the timeline that we are in, where we have a sense of the past and a sense of the future. But creative thought is something that gets you outside of just the past or the future, because in your imagination, your creative ability, the past is now, the future can be now, everything can be now. So you're outside and reflecting back onto that timeline. Now, when I'm talking about good and evil, of course I'm talking about what is good in the big picture, and goodness and truth are both good. What else is good? This ability to be outside of your timeline, to experience things in a timeless way, in a way in which time doesn't count as much. And that I call your creative perspective, where you're using your imagination, seeing things from many perspectives, experiencing things from many perspectives. And that, I say, is the artist in you. The part of you that can create visions of things not yet, or even go back and create a vision of the past which is different, or gives you a different experience of your past memories. The artist is the ultimate part of you that is outside of you and still you. So, since it is above the timeline, it's able to make connection to who you are, and not just in a direct kind of way, but through your objectivity and your empathy. You can imagine empathy. You can imagine an objective truth. You can picture things. And that are in the future. And so it is kind of a central part of this part of you that is not you, that is outside of you, but yet still you. So, in the way I describe it, when you go back to experience this whole picture that I'm talking about, you do it through your imagination. You do it through the artist. It is the artist in you in which you imagine yourself as the empathetic one, as the objective one, as the creative one. So this imagination is a gateway into your inner world. It is a main gateway. Now, when I talk about yoga, I say there's, they talk about the super soul, the Paramatma. That's a part of you that's outside of you, but still you. And the Atman, the soul, the feeling part of you that's in the drama of life, in the sphere of time, and experiencing things directly. So, what I say is that if you understand yoga correctly, you understand that it's statements that the super soul and the soul are the same. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. And Tat Twamasi, that supreme I am. And the thing is, what you have to do is to understand that even though, here's the mysterious bit, even though all of this is you, there's a relationship going on between you and the super you, the part that is reflective. And this is where your goodness comes from this connection. From this connection, pardon me. There's something in this house I'm not allergic to. I don't know what it is. Anyway. Let me continue. The communication between your soul and your super soul, the part that is you and the part that is outside of you, but still you, outside of your feelings, outside of your emotional direct experience of life, still you. And what is this communication? It's a communication between you and these virtues. And now I was talking about good and evil. I'm saying that this is good. It's on a spectrum, of course. The better that communication that you have with that which is you, but outside of you, and which is the source of your virtues, goodness, truth, and art, well, that's how good you can be. Now, what is the virtue called art, which comes from creativity? It is the power to see the beauty in yourself and others and the universe. And in fact, when you envision the universe, that's your artist. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna represented the super soul, and Arjuna represented the soul, and they were friends. And at one point, he asked to see the full nature of Krishna, and Krishna supposedly becomes this terrifying universal self, the entire universe. Well, your universe is this artist, because that's where you imagine how things are. And so your imagination of the universe, which is the only universe you know, is the same as this artist. This artist is that universe. And this is this concept in the Vedas called Brahman, the ultimate total existence, in which we are a drop in the ocean of this totality. And that's kind of where your humility comes from too. When you really, like Arjuna, peer into the universe within your mind, you feel humble, but at the same time you feel empowered. How does that empowerment occur? Well, it occurs when you are loving beyond yourself, being objective beyond your prejudices and illusions, when you are being creative beyond the limitations of your embarrassments and your inabilities to accept a different view. All of this beyond you is still you. Still part of the brain that is you. And that direct experiencing self in you, it needs this, the rest of this. So when you're beyond yourself, you're touching the great beauty of the universe itself. You are, and consider for a moment that as this Brahman, as this universal self, which connects you to everyone, yourself, to everything in your universe. Wow, it's a rush. When you connect to that, you're in bliss. The great mythologist Joseph Campbell talked about this. He said, "Follow your bliss." Well, I'm telling you how to find that bliss. It's through this true goodness, this connection to that which is outside of yourself, but still yourself. That is the foundation of your virtues. Being in touch with that is what I call goodness. And consider for another moment how you look, your soul, that part of you that is this struggling hero in the midst of your attempts to survive and to grow toward being a better person. This struggling hero is what is seen by your higher self, by your artist, that looks down and sees you, and its arms of objectivity and empathy loves you more than you can imagine, and sees you as this struggling hero, and as a very special and beautiful person, obviously. So, I've talked about what's good and what's evil. Well, evil is a falling short of this communication. It's a lack of this communication with this higher sense of self. And what is it based on? Is it something that people choose? Do people choose to be evil? No, they don't. What happens is that there are times in your life, everybody's life, when you were helpless to get some need met, maybe a very vital need. Helplessness is not something that any mammal can stand. Just can't. So, understand this. When this connection is made, well, what gets in the way of making that connection? Let's back up. To make that connection means that you have to overcome some of this helplessness in your life. These times when you couldn't be loved, when you couldn't love. Actually, the first thing that you will be able to deal with is the times when you couldn't get your needs met. That's the first thing that you have to feel on your journey. Lighter things are the more terrible thing of you're being so controlled by your helplessness that you hurt other people that you should love, which is everybody. So, how do we conquer this helplessness? This is the trick. Well, it's not an act of will. That's where you hear so much in the symbology of religion. You know, you hear about amazing grace. Well, you're not going to feel the real needs that helplessness is attached to, because it means to feel helpless. So what was given to you in place of that was a struggle for symbolic need, which is greed. Which, what did your Jesus say? Greed is the root of all evil, the love of money. The love of what is money? Symbolic of need. The love of the symbol of need is the root of all evil. So if you're chasing symbols, that's keeping you from making that connection. And it also means that you're going to be not outside of yourself enough to really connect and love other people, and in pursuit of these symbolic addictions, which are addictions because symbols cannot satiate you. They cannot fill you up, so to speak. And so what you've got to do is to unlearn the helplessness. So how do you do that? You have to feel that helplessness. But nobody does that as an act of will. And if they try, they're just going to have emotional fits, and maybe they'll bang on a wall and they just get angrier. You know, nothing works because it's not an act of will. You have to have amazing grace. You have to have something surprise you, surprise your brain's intricate defenses against ever feeling that. And that's the trick. And that's why I support primal therapy. Primal therapy does that. It has, their therapists are able to surprise you, to wear down and slowly dismantle those defenses and surprise you. So, help you to connect up with that real need, which means connecting you to the helplessness around that need. I happen to believe that real love itself can surprise you and weaken those defenses. Some don't agree with me, but I think I've experienced it. So, yeah. So my approach is a little different, because what are you going to do when you don't have these great professional people helping you to feel what everything in your brain says you should not feel? You will be sick, or you will be crazy. If you feel this, you will die, maybe. Which at one time was true. But now that you're saved, how do you deal with it? Well, you understand these things that I talked about with the yoga. You understand that. That's the first step. And then you have dialogues. The way you connect up to your empathy. And I'll get around to how this wears down defenses and can then lead to surprising revelations. But to connect with your empathy, and talking out loud is just more powerful. I'm sorry. Sorry to lay that on you. But writing it down, well, it's somehow you're saying in your head, you're talking it, saying it out loud, that helps. But if you talk to people you care about or who care about you, you're flipping back and forth between the empathetic you and the feeling you. Boom, 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 boom. That is a little more powerful in connecting to that helplessness and getting rid of it than, say, talking between the feeling you and the part of you that is objective and understanding. Now, that objective understanding part of you, kind of like your own internal therapist. But no, that would be your not so effective talky therapist. The real therapist, of course, is going to be that creative ability. Now, how do you connect to that objectivity? Well, you talk between that part of you that is feeling but has a good grasp of language. You have to visualize that self, which I call the kid. It's the part of you that is emotional, but has a good mastery of words, to express needs, about 6 years old. So envisioning yourself at this time in your life, or how you felt then, but in a current sense, you talk to that part of you that is caring and objective, the director in you. Now that empathy I call the caregiver in you. So that dialogue was kid caregiver, and this is kid director. Now when you're talking to that grown-up part of you, well, you can't have this that you're wanting, but you can have this, and tomorrow you might have more. And, well, try to understand, what your friend said to you, and, try to understand, where you are at the moment, that you can change that. Boom, boom, boom. That's the kid, and the director. And it does more to relieve anxieties from the present looking into the future, whereas the other helps more with those helplessness imprints in the past. Yeah. So, what is that communication between you and the artist? Well, you got to give the artist wide berth, because that is an awesome part of you. So you just say, show me what I need to see, or let me hear what I need to hear, and let your imagination answer you, because that is your creative nature. That is the artist within you. Now, is there a nonverbal level? Yes. And quite frankly, there are many people that you're going to need some help doing that. But let's go back to wearing down defenses. If you keep doing all these different dialogues out loud, and especially if you have a television show or a movie that's playing that, bit of an emotional thing, then something that, and tears are the golden path. The cry, with tears or without, the cry is the healing. So any movie that makes you cry, and I know guys, you don't want to watch those things, they're so boring, right? Women love that. Well, it's good for you. Of course. So anyway, if you have a movie like that playing on the outside, that will also perhaps trigger feelings that you need to feel, helplessness you need to experience. So just let that play in the background. And keep changing these dialogues. Don't stay in just one of them. Just keep changing it around. Okay, if you're overloaded, kid director or somebody that's really blown away, that might be the best thing for you. For others, the creative might be helpful. Definitely the empathy thing can be helpful, but again, it's closer to your feelings and closer to that potential feeling of helplessness. So do what feels right to you. But if you mix all of these things together, you have a more powerful impact from the practice. It's more apt or likely that you will at some point surprise yourself that you really can't do that with willpower. But if you wear down your defenses in this way, the real feelings inside you that from those trapped in that helplessness will start to come up for feeling and integration. Alright, that's how that works. And I'm just suggesting this for those people who cannot get the great therapy that's Genovian primal therapy. A lot of people say they're doing primal therapy. They are not. There's only a handful of people doing it right. Well, it's hard work. And it's serious work. So, you know, if you can make money not doing that, and if you can get a quickie cure, and I have this to say about quickie cures. If you just train yourself to be a better person, you know, smile on the phone when you call people because they'll feel that smile. You become a better human doing, but you're not genuine. You're not being a better human being. You only get that by conquering that helplessness. Sad to say. And integrating yourself with your virtues. You don't get that by reprogramming yourself. You don't get that by someone punishing you and you're scared not to change. You just don't change inside that way. You change with this process I'm talking about, otherwise you're not really changing. So, but the quickie cures is what insurance likes. So that's what society likes. I mean, it's all about punishing people to create better human doings. It's convenient, it's fast. Do this or I slap you. They do that with children. Well, you see how easily evil slips in? It slips in when you want to punish. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. So, then I'm going to put off going into the pre-verbal. That's pretty serious stuff. I'm going to hit the main path again that I've mentioned so many times. You have to feel what happened to you. Feel that helplessness and the need underneath. You have to feel that for what it is. You have to do that before you can know what you lost. You have to know what you've lost before you can grieve that loss and let it go. You have to grieve and let go of whatever you were able to feel. And know before you can forgive others and yourself involved with those losses. You have to do that before you can begin to actually change. And that change comes from tears of remorse, where you finally confront within that limited repertoire of needs and feelings and so on. You connect to how you have hurt others because of the hurt in you. And that's kind of devastating, and that's not the first thing that people can feel. Punishment tries to get you to feel that right away. That ain't going to happen. That's the most terrible thing of all to feel. It means being ostracized from society. Say that word over and over again, right? That's terrifying. And it's the last thing that you can feel. So, but the great thing is when you have tears of remorse, you're no longer the person who did those things. And you just keep going deeper into things that were more and more painful, more and more impacting on you, and becoming a better person. Just follow that line over and over, going deeper and deeper. Now, when you go very deep, you start to run into the times when you had no words and your needs weren't met. And this can be much more of a life or death situation, say at birth. Crying yourself to sleep in a crib, feeling utterly alone and devastated. These are traumas. So these are things that you just don't feel, and people aren't in touch with those things. Like if they were spanked as children, punished, and they go, "Oh, that's how they loved me." No, it wasn't. It's how they were trying to make you a better human doing. That wasn't love. It was convenience. And at best. And nobody sees the bad in that until they actually go back and feel what happened to them. Until then, they think that's the way to virtue. Being a better human doing. Putting on an act that works. It's not enough. It's not enough to save our planet. It's not enough to save humanity. It's just not enough. So, there is a deeper level, yeah, as I was just starting to go into. And that deeper level is wordless terror. Okay? So, in this wordless terror, you cannot feel that right away. So you want to skip all of the other damages and go directly to that. Overwhelming. You have to, like you're building a bridge of safety as you feel the lighter things and go deeper. You create more circuitry, more ways to handle the impact. So that when you get there, you're able to do, and even for some of the best, it's, you probably need somebody to help you with that. And you sure don't want to be pushing it. Well, the bad thing in religions is they push for you to be a better human doing way too often. And they push for you to connect to those times when you had no words. How do they do that? I don't know that they did that. Yeah, well, they do. Let me tell you how they do that. Meditation. Yeah, well, yeah, one of the pillars of yoga. Remember, yoga was developed in a very neurotic time. But meditation, because if you're just meditating on your body, or silencing everything, well, you're silencing that communication, that inner speech. When you silence that, guess what's left? That part of you that is before words. That part of you that is in most contact with that helplessness from a time that, as I described it, was wordless terror. Okay. Now, there are two other ways. Another way, and a pillar of yoga, is using words to kill language. Hail Mary, full of grace, Om Namo Bhagavate, Om Mani Padme, over and over and over again, chanting. That kills the that communication, that inner speech, and opens that area again. So, yeah, the other way of doing that, of course, is to create language, and glossolalia is the thing, Yaram Yiharam Sahara Eleman. It's not language. It's kills that inner speech, that inner communication language form. So it's jumbo. That's wow, this place is toxic. Go into poverty and how this is all connected, but, another day. Okay. What is the other way? Breathing. Nothing closer you feeling to breathing, right? But if you're focusing just on your breathing, especially if it's deep breathing, because part of the way you hold back that hurt in you is shallow breathing. Because you're repressed, right? That's part of the repression. So is tension in the body. So, deep relaxation, deep breathing, that sort of thing. That also gets rid of the inner speech, which is your defense against feeling things that are possibly overwhelming. So if you go into those things, or you have speech or language that tells you you're lost, or that, oh gosh, you're just, that just terrifies you. You're a wretch that saved a wretch like me. Well, that's taking you back to that, which you cannot feel. So indeed, you do feel lost. And then one religion comes along and says, well, oh, now that you're feeling lost, let me show you what salvation is. Yeah, and they're all different, of course. So it becomes your new addiction. And when one person runs into another person who's holding back extreme terror in some cases, depending on how hurt the person is, with another who has a different thing, way of doing it, they can be in conflict. They can trigger each other. Each causes the other to be frightened. must be evil because you don't say the things my religion says that you have to say. You don't do the right rituals. You do these other rituals. Oh my gosh. You must be the devil. So that's where that foolishness comes from. And that's the problem with religion. The good aspects of religion, yeah, where it begins to touch on or be symbolic of this process. And they do that at certain points. Because neurosis and insanity itself, if it's a neurotic version, is built on real need and helplessness. So the symbols are reminiscent of their origins. So it can seem to people that a religion is speaking to them. And in a way it is. And certainly you can see how someone talking to that part of their brain, which is the artist, the Arjun Krishna, that you would say, well, that's God. You know, the Lord of the universe. Well, yeah. Your artist is the Lord of your universe. That's not a very objective view of the world. But, yeah. Yeah, your artist is the Lord of your universe. And yet, when people bow and they say namaste, I love that. Because they're recognizing that actually we're all part of that universe. We all have some of that universe in us, and we all have a picture of it of some kind. You know, bow to the other person, recognize that they have this Buddha nature or this universal reality inside them. This is impacting. And I like to use that. Okay, but how do you integrate those things which are wordless terror? Well, first of all, you've got to do a lot of work at upper levels. And then, on occasion, some of these other things will come through. And what happens is, with any of these things, is that you're actually kind of reliving the thing within the helplessness. The feeling of the helplessness, but you're outside of the helplessness. Part of you knows that you're safe, but you're nevertheless feeling that helplessness. That unlearns it. That neutralizes it. When you feel that helplessness, it loses its power over you. You're no longer lost in symbols of that need. You found what the real need was. So, that is an important step. When you're having dreams where there's no people, and it's really scary, you know, you need to be gentle with yourself. Don't go deep into your feelings. Just do the director and the kid. Back off. You've overloaded. If you have dreams in which there's a lot of things that are symbolic of death, or everything's very dark and depressing, back off. Back off from that. You know, try to cheer yourself up. yeah, it's you're overloading. And integrating is not the same as overloading. Integrating is not the same as putting on an act. You can do that and it'll look so real to everybody. Oh, Mama hit me. Oh, it's so devastating. Yeah. When it comes up on its own. It's not an act of will. It's not an act of, I remember this and I'm reacting to it. That will get you nowhere fast. In fact, it will make it harder for someone to treat you later. Because, why? Because your defense system has just improved and gotten even trickier. A little harder for the primal therapist to work through that. So anyway, you don't do that. It's willpower. If you're trying to feel something, oh gosh, you're not going to find it. Just do the practice. And look out for overload. Try to be gentle with yourself. If you're pushing yourself, you're getting nowhere. The more you push, the more your defenses become stronger. So, don't do that. Right? If what I'm saying to you is terrifying, go back off from it. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you can't handle it quite yet. And it's quite okay to keep living neurotically. Being a human, doing, pleasing the neighbors. Yeah, well, we've done that a lot, you know. And species is still here. So, you know, don't even take this whole path too seriously. Where you need humor. You know, it's slow, it's gradual. You do what you can. It should cause you to feel compassion for people and not push them to change, because they can't. You can teach them the way, what the Buddha said. But as the Zen Buddhists say, the teaching is just a finger pointing to the moon. You have to leave the finger behind to see the moon. Well, yeah, somebody's going to say, well, you can take a picture of the finger and the moon. That's, yeah, right. But if you're going to look directly at the moon, you know, the person standing close to you, you do have to leave the finger there. And the other way, which the Buddha talked about, the path is it's like a raft to get to the other side. A sure way to find out that somebody is kind of fake is the Buddha said, when you get to the other side, you don't need the raft anymore. So if someone is still in process, let them be honest and humble. Because if they have arrived, and I've never met anybody who has totally arrived, but if they've totally arrived, all of that learned helplessness is gone, they've got this perfect connection going on, well, they don't need to practice anything. They just so if they're still practicing, well, they didn't arrive. And so we're all teachers, we're all students, and there's nobody who should be too proud to learn from anybody. And, well, I think this might be a time to start wrapping this up. Yes, you can use those things that religions use to tap into that wordless level. But I caution you, it's like salt and pepper. I don't want you terrified of it, but it's like salt and pepper, you know. You don't want a little food with your salt and pepper. You want very little salt and pepper with your food. Just the right amount. So you can do the 3 practices in a feeling way that yoga talks about. Yeah, it will help you to relive things that are more physical and less involved with language. And you can do that by breathing in and out with feeling. By making up sounds and language and adding feeling to it. Or you can meditate on what you feel. You can do any of those 3 things, and you can try to open those things up with some touch of that, some amount of that can help the rest of the process. But again, salt and pepper. Very little focus on that. Now, there's some who may object. Are there people who know more about this process than I? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I don't know anybody who knows everything. But I do know people who are professionals. So, sorry, I'm not your perfect guru. And the only real guru is all of us working together in love. Namaste. Have a great life.